What is something dirty that you've done, but if you told anyone they would probably never want to talk to you again? Story 1. I had a really terrible supervisor at a job I used to work at. The job itself was great, and I put up with him for 4 years because the pay was so good. Then I got promoted and had to work directly under him, dealing with his constant outbursts and fixing his dumb mistakes for another 6 years. Eventually, we all got laid off when the work was outsourced. The last time I saw this guy, he went off on me again over some nonsense. Like always, I said nothing. Just let him scream in my face until he got tired and walked away. On the ride home, my coworker asked how I managed to put up with that a-hole for a decade. I just smiled and told him I'd been sleeping with his wife for the past 8 years. She worked downstairs, so I'd catch her in the mornings and pound her in the mailroom. During my lunch breaks, she'd sneak off and give me blowy in the back of his car. When he had to work weekends, I'd go over to his house and bang his wife right in his own bed. On top of that, I recorded videos of us and posted them on porn sites, daring him to find them. My friend's jaw dropped and all he could do was tap out on the car dashboard like a WWE wrestler. About 3 years ago, she told me he was terminally ill with throat cancer and that I should go visit him because he didn't have much time left. When I asked why, she said that out of everyone who worked for him, I was the most reliable, and he had talked about me for years, right up until he lost his vocal cords. She even said he admitted to silently blocking my promotion several times because I was his best worker. That mother effer. That was the final push that made me decide to visit him. By then, he was in hospice care, just days, maybe even hours from passing. He couldn't talk, move, or breathe on his own, hooked up to machines handling all his bodily functions. When he saw me, his eyes lit up and quickly glanced at a chair beside him, where an envelope was waiting. It looked like he'd prepared a card for me before he got too sick. A sort of thank you note with a check for $2,500 inside. What I could have been earning weekly if I'd actually been promoted. I sat down next to him, and we shared a quiet moment, reflecting on the 10 years I worked under him. All the crap I put up with, how I never seemed to get fazed when he yelled or blamed me for mistakes he himself had made. Then I pulled out my phone, ready to do what I'd come to do. For the next hour, I showed him all the videos I recorded of his wife getting plowed, in the mailroom, in his office, in his bed. I reminisced all the times she told me all the freaky things she wanted to do, but he was never into as I flicked through videos of her getting plowed Scooby-Doo style. The costumes she would wear as she pretended to be my secretary, while she gave me a blowy in his chair, the time I made her a pretzel staring in the camera while I was banging her back door. He couldn't speak or move, but damn, the emotion in his eyes was impossible to miss. Eventually, he drifted off to sleep. The nurse told me to keep the visit brief since she'd given him something for the pain earlier. I stood up, slipped the check into my pocket, and tossed the card in the trash as soon as I hit the bank. He passed away less than a day later. I used that money to take his wife on a cruise, almost got kicked off for waking up the neighbors. Before we continue, do us a quick favor, smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. So when I was younger, I met this guy online who offered me £500 to have relations with his wife. Naturally, I was like, hell yes. We arranged to meet in London, and he said he'd pay me half up front and half afterward. When he picked me up, it was just the two of us in the car. When we got to his place, it quickly became clear there was no wife. Instead, he asked if he could give me a blowy for the remaining money. I felt stuck in his London flat, but I thought, screw it, let's find out once and for all if I like this life. I didn't say that out loud. He put on some corn and told me to get ready so he could go ahead. I managed to get turned on watching the TV, and then he gave me a blowy. Not gonna lie, his chin was bristly and I wasn't a fan. I closed my eyes and just tried to get through it. He knew I hated every second. Then he said if I let him give me a blowy just before I reached the finish line, he'd give me another £500. So I did. Afterward, he drove me back to where he picked me up, and I left with £750. I felt good about the money, but also really weird. What's even stranger, a couple of friends somehow found out about the story. Like, they heard I was meeting this guy to bang his wife, apparently, and I don't know how true this is. They met him too and kept up the charade that they'd slept with his wife as well. We never talked about it openly, but we all made some money off it over the years, and honestly, I only saw his wife once. I've never told anyone this story before. I've had chances to share it on Reddit, or maybe post it on my blog someday, maybe behind a subscription, but for now it stays right here. Story 3. The apartment was unusually quiet with everyone else off on vacation, leaving me the only one around. It felt strange at first, but also kind of peaceful. One of my flatmates, who happens to be ridiculously attractive, had left just a day earlier. She's got this thing for perfume. Always wears it, always strong. It's the kind that lingers long after she's gone. And honestly, it's kind of addictive. Every time I walk past her room, it's like she's still there. We've never been the type to lock our doors in the apartment, so everything feels open. A little vulnerable, like the place is holding its breath until everyone comes back. One night I went to her room, took one of her dirty inners and smelled it while soloing on her bed. I felt a bit guilty afterward, but I told myself, if she never finds out, then no harm done, right? I was careful putting everything back exactly the way it was before slipping back into my room. But the temptation didn't let up. I ended up doing it all over again, 3 more times that same night. And yet, strangely enough, never again after that. In my defense, all I can really say is that I'm a total super virgin, and the loneliness hit especially hard that day. I was also very, very stoned. That doesn't excuse it, I know, but it adds some context. To be fair, I don't think I did anything technically wrong. I had permission to be in her room to water the plants, and I made sure not to mess anything up or leave a trace. Still, I get that if she ever found out, her reaction would probably be more emotional than logical. And honestly, I wouldn't blame her. Story 4. One of my girlfriends in college was a very heavy sleeper. I'd go over and spend the night at her place most nights because my frat house was disgusting and I had a roommate. On the nights we didn't do the deed, I'd wait for her to fall asleep, put a pair of her inners from the dirty hamper over my face and nose, and solo off loudly. Usually I'd even turn on Korn. It was back in the day before smartphones. There was at least one occasion where I can remember going into her roommate's room while she was out to get a pair of her inners instead. I did this at least twice a week for a few months, and I was somehow never caught. Yeah, I had a little shame back then. Story 5. When I was 19, I paid $350 for the company of a lady of the night. Afterward, I headed to a friend's party, got ridiculously drunk, and realized I'd left my phone charger at her motel. I called an Uber, went back, and she wouldn't let me in unless I paid again. So I handed over another $350, did the deed again, grabbed my charger and left. It wasn't until the next morning that it hit me. I could have just bought a new charger for $10. I was pretty messed up that night and completely devoid of any form of logical thinking whatsoever. Story 6. When I was younger, I tried to, taste my own popsicle. I pulled it off, but in the process gave myself a hernia that still acts up from time to time, even 30 years later. Moral of the story. If you're young and flexible, stretch daily, seriously. Edit. 1. Yes, I did succeed, but I didn't swallow. That was a line I wasn't ready to cross. Since I didn't have the nerve to finish, I eventually gave up on the whole thing. 2. Surprisingly, it didn't feel like giving a blowy at all. It felt exactly like getting one, 100%. 3. I had the hernia surgically repaired. Still got a metal plate in there, and yeah, it's mildly annoying sometimes, but nothing unbearable. Story 7. I used to steal my neighbor's Wi-Fi regularly to download Spanish-language corn, which I'd then burn onto CDs and trade with my Mexican drug dealer for various goods. To make sure the files worked, I'd watch every video. Well, more like fast-forward at high speed to the end to confirm they played properly. Funny thing is, I absolutely tanked Spanish in high school. I barely scraped by with a D-, and only passed because I promised my teacher I'd never take another one of her classes. I didn't retain a single useful thing from that class, except a bunch of inappropriate Spanish words and phrases that honestly I doubt I'll ever need in normal conversation. I'm a huge prude now, but this wasn't my first time dealing with smut. For nearly a decade, I worked at the only corn store and head shop in a small rural town back in the 90s, when adult VHS rentals were still a big deal. After the store closed each night, one of my tasks was to fix damaged VHS tapes using Scotch tape. Of course, I had to fast forward through each one to make sure it played properly before putting it back on the shelf. I guess that technically makes me a corn quality control specialist, but honestly, I doubt that's a skill anyone's actively recruiting for. Story 8. When I was 18, I broke into the corner store near my house and made off with a few cartons of cigarettes. I didn't smoke then and still don't. I just figured I could flip them to the neighborhood kids for some quick cash. One kid tried to blackmail me, saying he'd rat me out unless I gave him a steady supply for free. I told him I had a pack I opened once, tried one, hated it, and he could have the rest. I went home, grabbed that pack, and gave each cigarette a personal touch. Rubbed the filters on my cat's bum, my dog's bum, lightly tapped one on a cat turd, and even gave one a little spin around my own rear just to seal the deal. Then I gave him that used pack along with a clean one to keep him from running his mouth. He never found out, but honestly, knowing how he turned out, I'm pretty sure that's what kick-started his rear-end eating journey. You're welcome, I guess. Story 9. I'm probably way too late for anyone to see this, but years ago, while I was pregnant, my partner walked out on me, completely, and for good. Fast forward a few years, and I ended up working at the same place as his new girlfriend. I had no idea who she was at first. We just hit it off naturally. We became good work friends, even grabbing drinks together after shifts. She'd often vent about her crappy boyfriend, but always just called him my boyfriend, so I never connected the dots, not right away anyway. One night, after work, we went out for drinks while her boyfriend was out of town. Things escalated, and we ended up back at her place, hooking up hard. Yeah, I know it was crappy of me to be involved with someone who had a partner. The next morning, her boyfriend came home way earlier than expected. That's when I realized he was actually the father of my child, the same guy who disappeared after I got pregnant. I'd never pushed for child support or anything. He was furious to see me there. I grabbed my things and got out of there as fast as I could. He's involved in our kid's life now, and the three of us maintain a fairly friendly relationship. But to this day, I'm not sure if he knows I hooked up with his now wife. None of us have ever brought it up. So yeah, I've slept with both my kid's dad and his stepmom. Story 10. I enjoy telling strangers online the stories of when I was SA in graphic detail for the purpose of them to solo off to. I enjoy when they victim blame and ask disgusting personal questions. It makes me feel guilty because not only is that super messed up, but I feel like if anyone ever found out, they'd think I wasn't SA'd in the first place. I was. I don't just have a liking. I mean, I do have a liking. But it's not just a liking, it genuinely happened to me, and I didn't have a thing for it at all the first time it happened. It sucked. I had nightmares for months, and would often wake up crying at night. I don't think even the closest, most trusted friends in my entire life would ever understand if they found out about that. I don't even think most other victims would ever understand it. It's isolating and invalidating, but it's all my own fault. Story 11. I did it with a man while he hid in a stairwell with his daughter. When I was in college, I'd just gotten out of a relationship and was feeling pretty horny, so I ended up browsing Craigslist personals. Most were fakes, but every now and then you'd find someone real. One woman, in her mid-30s, invited me to a hotel to hook up. When I got there, she told me not to come upstairs yet because her husband was taking their daughter out. I figured he meant he'd be leaving the hotel to take her somewhere like McDonald's. Not wanting to risk running into him in the elevator, I decided to take the stairs up to the 3rd floor. But when I reached the 2nd floor, I heard voices coming from above me. "Daddy, what's mommy doing?" "Shit, sweetie. We're just gonna stay here for a bit." I paused, got out of the stairwell on the 2nd floor, then took the elevator up to the 3rd floor, and yes, I still did it after that. That experience has stayed with me ever since. Not because of anything I did, I was just there to bang, but because of the brief, unsettling glimpse into that family's life. The woman posted frequently online, and judging by the state of their room, it seemed like they actually lived in that hotel. My heart still aches for that little girl, who probably had to hide with her dad in the stairwell while her mom was with strangers from Craigslist. Story 12. My wife isn't into corn and wasn't interested in being intimate anymore, so sometimes after work, I'd stop by a local adult shop to relieve some tension. I'd let a few guys give me blowy there, but not often. I'm mostly straight, but one day a guy and I walked in around the same time. He was very attractive and married, which made me feel safe. He went into a booth, and after a few minutes I popped my head in to ask if he minded sharing the booth and soloing ourselves together. He said it was fine. After a few minutes, I got so worked up that I thought I'd try giving him a blowy. I'd never done it before, but he still felt safe. I gave it a shot but wasn't very good. So after a few minutes I stopped, we both did our thing and left. The next week, my son's football practice started, and the guy was the coach. The look he gave me was pure dread. It turns out our sons went to the same school, and we'd never met before that day. 10 years later, our sons grew up together, and he and I are friendly now, but we've never mentioned what happened that day. Story 13. A friend once showed me pictures of his hot wife, and I ended up convincing both of them to play a game we called the Hunger Games. She hid clues all over town in a kind of scavenger hunt, with the final clue leading to her hiding out in a hotel room, dressed in lingerie and wearing a blindfold. Long story short, she got completely wasted one night and texted me the hotel and room number. I went there, cracked open a few beers, and ended up clapping her cheeks more times than I can even count. That night was wild, unforgettable. Now more than 10 years later, she and I are planning a sequel, Hunger Games 2. We've rigged the whole thing so I win again, but her husband has no clue. While he's at work and she's hiding clues, I'll be the one dropping her off at the airport and flying out to spend an entire day with her, just the two of us. Then when he gets off work, I'll show up to win the staged game all over again. If everything goes according to plan, he'll get wasted, and she and I will have the whole night to ourselves, free to do whatever we want. It's a thrill like no other, part game, part secret adventure, and honestly, I can't wait to see how it all unfolds. Story 14. I once had a friend who lived in a flat out in his garden. A pretty cool setup, except it didn't have a toilet. To do your business, you had to go into the main house. One night when I was about 18, we had a party there. Everyone got wasted, and a few of us crashed at his place. Around 3 a.m., I woke up feeling like I was about to give birth to something awful. Everyone else was passed out cold, and I knew that if I wanted to use the bathroom, I'd have to bang loudly on the main house door, wake up his parents and maybe the neighbors, and then awkwardly explain to his mom why I needed to come in. Being a socially awkward guy, that was basically a nightmare scenario for me. So instead, I made a terrible decision. I dropped my pants and quietly did my business right there in his garden, tried to cover it up half-heartedly with some dirt, and then washed myself off in his beautiful swimming pool. I dried off and shamefully went back to bed. The next morning I came out of my room to find my friend's mom picking up the dog poop, holding up a piece of what was obviously mine, and debating whether their dog was sick or if some wild animal had wandered into the yard. That moment has stuck with me for 20 years. Story 15. I'm a 45-year-old man living in a co-op apartment building in New York City. About 6 months ago, I worked on a building beautification project with one of the residents. She's probably about 30 years older than me. Over the course of the project, we shared a lot of laughs and developed an easy, genuine friendship. When it wrapped up, she invited me over to her apartment for dinner. The night was filled with great conversation and more than a little wine. At one point, while I was talking, she placed her hand over mine on the table, leaned in and kissed me. I kissed her back. We ended up being physical that night, and honestly, it was really good. About a week later, she called and asked if I could come help her change a light bulb in her ceiling. That turned out to be a pretext. It led to round 2. Since then, we've developed a kind of unspoken arrangement. She texts me when she needs help, I come by, and we sleep together. If I told anyone in my life that I'm in an ongoing physical relationship with a woman in her mid-70s, I honestly don't know what their reaction would be. I think most people would assume I'd lost my mind. Story 16. When I was 18, I shoplifted a different kind of flashlight from a local 18-plus store. I was so excited to use it that I couldn't even wait to get home. I drove off, used it while driving, and actually reached the finish line. Then came the post-peak clarity. Panicking, I chucked it out the window, thinking I was launching it into some random patch of woods. But just as I let go, I glanced over and caught a sight that's been seared into my memory ever since. A used flashlight exploding across a gravestone in a cemetery at 45 miles per hour. That's when reality really hit me. Story 17. Offered my CFO some much-needed tension relief. That reminds me of the only time I ever went out with coworkers. I usually keep work and personal life completely separate, but after our hospital nailed an excellent joint commission survey, the CFO, a towering powerhouse woman in her mid-40s, wanted to take the entire maintenance crew out for drinks. Or at least, that's what she said. Her real plan? Something way more wild. The night started off normal, but she was relentless about everyone taking shots. Wanted all three of us hammered. Naturally, we went along with it. Then out of nowhere, she pulls out her phone and shows me something. Through my blurry, drunken eyes, I focus in and see a massive pair of fake jugs and a full spread pie. I'm married and autistic, so I don't mess around like that. After that incident, my director left immediately, and I followed shortly after. No one knows exactly what happened between her and the last guy. There's been plenty of speculation, but he never said a word to me. He's married with kids, just like the rest of us. It didn't end there, but I'm ranting, so I'll keep it brief. Come Monday, she called me into her office, shut the door, and it felt like a scene straight out of Horrible Bosses. Think Jennifer Aniston in a doctor's coat with nothing underneath. I resisted and told her I'm not about that life. A couple days later, she was fired. I'm no snitch, so I kept everything to myself. Though my wife knew the whole story, I don't keep secrets from her. Later, she went to HR and spilled everything we talked about at the bar, including the fact that I smoke weed. HR called me in to discuss the weed rumor, and I absolutely lost it. I told HR that their CFO was seating employees, and that they'd be siding with the abuser instead of protecting the hardworking staff who just nailed their JCO inspection. I even threatened them with a lawsuit. That was the end of it. I haven't been drug tested since. This all went down about 3 years ago. Story 18. When I was 18, my next-door neighbor was a female bodybuilder, and I was totally obsessed. I talked her into letting me babysit, mostly because I thought if she came home after a night out, maybe I'd have a chance with her. Turns out, it didn't take much convincing. What started as babysitting turned into a bi-weekly thing for about a year, until we moved. Nobody ever knew I was sleeping with my 40-year-old neighbor, and even now I'm still obsessed with muscly women. Looking back, yeah, it was pretty messed up, but honestly, I have a lot of messed up stories like that. Tough to say which one takes the prize. Story 19. Either the act itself or this confession will eventually come back to bite me. But it's been over 15 years, so screw it. Back at summer camp, I ended up smacking the hell out of a fellow a-hole camper. He was an absolute menace, constantly screaming at night, destroying other kids' stuff, and generally making everyone miserable. It was obvious his parents treated him like royalty, zero discipline, all coddling. They even broke camp rules by calling multiple times a day just to talk to him. This kid desperately needed someone to say no to him for once. No one dared lay a finger on him for understandable reasons. But one day he pushed way too far and I just snapped. At the time, I was a junior counselor in training, supervising the archery course. This kid was terrible at it and got frustrated watching the other kids hit their targets while he missed. Then, out of nowhere, he grabbed an arrow and started hitting the kid next to him with it. I quickly snatched the arrow away, and he let out this blood-curdling banshee scream that seemed like it would never end. So, without thinking twice, I smacked him upside the head and told him to shut the hell up. By some miracle, it worked instantly. The kid turned into practically an angel for the rest of the week, like I literally knocked some sense into him. Story 20. I have a particular liking where someone is wearing a pair of heels they can't take off, as in they're strapped up, locked on, cursed, and can't come off, and then they step in an adhesive trap like a person-sized glue trap and can't pull free of it by their own power, but are able to struggle in it. I don't think I know anyone that I could ask to play this out for me. Story 21. Back in 2017, after being off the dating scene for 12 years, I met a girl on OkCupid who seemed to have a drive that matched my own, definitely higher than average. What she didn't mention were her certain likings. On our second date, we went swimming, and when we got back to her place, things quickly heated up. Afterwards, she suggested we hop in the shower together. Once in the shower, everything got soapy and intense. She started giving me a blowy, but I had to cut her off and say, "Hold on, I need to pee real quick." She turns the water down, scoots back, and asks me to use my hand shower and shower it on her face and chest. Golden showers aren't my thing. I hadn't given one to anyone since I was 5 years old, and at that time it was an act of revenge for someone hitting my little brother. 30-some-odd years later, here's this hot nurse asking me to do it on her. I was torn. Normally I have a shy bladder, yet here was this woman looking up at me with these doe eyes begging. She grabs my hand shower and aims it at herself, and I begin. It was very strange having someone else control my dong while I did my thing. She genuinely seemed so happy. When I was done, she licked the last few drops and then went to town giving me a blowy. Story 22. I grew up in a very conservative Asian family. After going abroad for university and discovering that guys actually find me attractive if I just went out more, I ended up exploring and eventually got to the point where I let 2 guys take me to an Airbnb home to take turns. The only rule is 1 at a time in the room, but the other is allowed to listen at the door. This happened for a whole weekend. Story 23. I used to casually see this girl who eventually married someone else. Even after tying the knot, she'd occasionally hit me up late at night, invite me over, sneak me in through the front door, and go down on me right there in the hallway while her husband was supposedly asleep upstairs. Later on, I found out they were swingers, and I've always wondered if he was actually awake, quietly watching from the shadows the whole time. She was incredibly attractive, and honestly, it felt rude to say no. Story 24. When I was a kid, I had this corkboard hanging above my bed, held up by a string looped over a nail in the wall. I'd been quietly collecting racy magazine clippings for a while when I had what felt like a stroke of genius. I realized the board was double-sided, so naturally, I started pinning the pictures to the back, facing the wall. When the mood struck, all I had to do was flip it around. Instant private gallery. Incredibly convenient. Peak childhood ingenuity. One day I was lying in bed reading comics, minding my own business, when my mom suddenly burst in to yell at me to clean my damn room. The force of the door swinging open must have shaken the wall because the nail holding up my corkboard popped right out. It fell straight onto my face and of course landed corno side up. My mom paused, took one look at the half-bare collage, now proudly displayed across my bed, muttered, "Jesus Christ," and just shut the door. Never brought it up again. Story 25. The first time I ever soloed was actually at a friend's house. He was knocked out in bed with the TV still on, and one of those Girls Gone Wild infomercials started playing. No one had ever explained anything to me about it. I just instinctively started soloing. As I got closer to the edge, I kept stopping because I genuinely thought I was about to pee. I had no clue what was actually about to happen. I must have unintentionally edged myself for nearly an hour before finally thinking, screw it, and just letting it happen. When it was over, I remember inspecting the situation like something had gone terribly wrong and kept glancing over at my friend still fast asleep. I ended up sneaking off to the bathroom, genuinely concerned that something wasn't right with me. So, Anthony, if you're reading this, my bad, man. I didn't mean to christen your brother's bed, but I had to see it through. Story 26. Back in college, I was hanging out with one of my football teammates. We stopped at a McDonald's drive-thru and accidentally ended up with an extra Big Mac. As we were driving past, we spotted a woman walking on the sidewalk. She was a bit overweight. I leaned out the car window and tossed the Big Mac right at her, while my friend driving yelled, "Eat it, fatty." The burger exploded all over her face. Lettuce flying everywhere, the bun shredded and scattered through the air. We cracked up, thinking we were the coolest and funniest guys as we retold the story to our friends. Looking back now, I realize it wasn't funny at all. I was being an a-hole. That was a person with feelings, and what we did could have caused her lasting emotional harm. I wish I could find her someday to apologize and get some closure for myself. She's often on my mind, and I truly hope she's doing okay and forgives me. Story 27. When I was 11, I was stuck in this tiny run-down trailer in the woods on vacation. I tend to get constipated when I can't use my own bathroom, and we were there for a whole week. By day 5, I just couldn't hold it anymore. I ended up taking the biggest dump I've ever had, and the trailer's plumbing didn't stand a chance. I was freaking out because, 1, there was no plunger, and 2, I'd already lied about needing to grab sunscreen so I could sneak away to the lake. In a total panic, I grabbed some cleaning gloves, reached in, pulled the mess out, and stuffed it into a brown paper lunch bag. I rode my bike to the lake about 15 minutes away, carrying the biggest, hardest, nastiest poop I've ever seen, stuffed in a lunch sack hanging off my handlebars like some kind of gross sandwich. When I got to the lake, I just threw it into the first trash can I found, hunching over and avoiding eye contact, hoping anyone who saw would just think I didn't like my lunch. Then I awkwardly joined my family to play bokes, all the while haunted by that evil little brown paper bag. I've never told anyone this story before. It actually feels pretty good to finally get it off my chest. Story 28. One of my best friends in college was a double major in computer science and Japanese, and he had made friends with several Korean students. One night, while bar hopping, he took us to a frat party he'd been invited to. The guys there were friendly to him and welcoming to me, but they were openly rude and blatantly racist toward the Korean students, clearly too drunk to hide it. We decided to leave right away, but as we were walking out, I told the hosts I needed to pay the rent. Honestly, I really had to use the bathroom badly. They kindly pointed my friend to the restroom by the entrance. I told my companions I'd meet them outside, waited until they were gone, and locked myself in the bathroom. I then proceeded to pee everywhere. On the seat, the floor, the toilet paper roll, their toothbrushes, and even their towels. I stood in the middle of the bathroom, spinning around and spraying every surface and item I could reach, as long as it wasn't inside the bowl. Afterward, I fixed my hair, checked my teeth, and made a swift exit. Story 29. I soloed off in many places, and at many work, including a big company. Let's say this company was as big as I had to be on site by 7 a.m. and was usually exhausted. So almost every morning, after calling the check-in number to prove I was there, I'd sneak a quick nap under my desk, lucky to have an office all to myself. Most of the time, this was right after soloing off. Honestly, I wasn't happy and wasn't getting much regular intimacy with my then-girlfriend. Since I couldn't solo off without some kind of visual, I needed to access porn sites. The problem? The company firewall blocked any websites deemed bad, so accessing porn was a no-go. One day, I took my usual nap and soloed off a bit too late. After 8 a.m., not the smartest move. When I came back with my coffee, I saw an email from IT saying something like, "Dear M, we've noticed your computer tried to access adult websites multiple times. If this was you, please be careful and remember blah blah blah. If it wasn't, please contact us ASAP as it could be a hacking attempt or something." OMG, I was totally trapped. I somehow managed to reply with something like, "Oh sorry, that might have been from me. Browsing alternate sites and getting some unwanted pop-ups. That seemed to do the trick." Funny thing is, months later, the IT guy who sent that email contacted me because I had to create an account for him on some software I managed, but let's just say neither of us mentioned how we actually knew each other. Honestly, I was this close to getting fired. After that, I just downloaded corn onto a USB stick, renamed the files, and felt way safer. One day, I was soloing off for the second or third time that morning, which was pretty rare for me, around 10 a.m. I didn't lock the door because that would have looked suspicious, being locked in my own office. My office had a few windows too, so I had to wedge a big calendar between the window and my face to keep things hidden. Anyway, I was going at it as fast as I could when suddenly someone knocked on the door. It was Barbara, the assistant to the site director. And no, not a sexy Barb. As she came in, I quickly scooted my wheelchair further under the desk. When she moved in to greet me with kisses, as is the custom here, I said, "Oh, sorry Barbara, I can kiss you today. I'm feeling a bit sick." Phew, that was way too close. I think that was the second time I nearly got fired. One day, after taking care of some personal stuff on a tissue, as usual, I was about to throw it in the closest bathroom bin. Oh no, here comes a colleague at the coffee machine, and we ended up shaking hands. Needless to say, I'm not left-handed. Sorry about that, really I am. Maybe that day you noticed how unusually warm my hand was. Here's a not-so-exhaustive list of places where I had some private moments. 1. On the beach. 2. On some theater rooftops. Greece, Senegal, France, Tunisia. Also had some encounters inside theaters, including a memorable one where I was with my girlfriend while doing lighting for a one-man show in a small room at the front of the theater, above a crowded auditorium. 3. On top of many windows. 4. In the forest back before cell phones were common. With a friend, one of us held a magazine, and we were more or less back to back doing our own thing. Some of it even got on the leaves. 5. Many times with friends during sleepovers. Though we were pretty reserved, let's just say we kept our distance enough so no one would see anything awkward. 6. At many friends' places while they were asleep. Sometimes even if their mom was sleeping in another room. 7. I've done it in my living room too, in front of the projector, even when family or friends had gone to bed before me. 8. I've also been with someone else while driving, or as a passenger. 9. On a train with a laptop and some corno. 10. Once while doing a yoga shoulder stand. Yeah, a kind of self-care thing. 11. I've forgotten many times, maybe near some walls or plants. To add some context about number 10, I was around 15 and experimenting with different things, thinking if people do it in videos, why not me? Of course I was curious about different sensations. I even tried some things with a candle and a mirror for exploration. There was even one very embarrassing moment I won't go into detail about, but I swear it was just once. Once I tried a kind of personal challenge to see how many times I could do it in 24 hours. The first night I managed 6 times, then 4 more during the day. Man, that was intense. The last one was really tough, and I wasn't feeling great afterward. One day, while still living with my mom and I didn't say stepmom, okay, I used the magazine I bought a few weeks earlier. Yay! I could relax on the couch instead of my computer chair. So there I was, just enjoying some private time on the sofa, when suddenly I heard my mom coming upstairs. I quickly froze, hoping she wouldn't notice, and pretended I was just relaxing as she walked by. Story 30. My friend with benefits went with her mom to her grandparents' house about an hour and a half away. She was drinking and feeling really turned on, and I was too, just without the drinks. Anyway, she told me to come over, said she'd introduce me to her grandparents and have a story ready that I was in town for work. I showed up wearing a sleeveless shirt, and she was annoyed because she didn't want me meeting her grandpa looking so casual. So she sneaked me down to the basement, where her grandmother came by and gave me one of her husband's shirts, definitely a wild grandma who seemed to know exactly why I was there. Then I went upstairs and met him. We spent a lot of time together in the basement, where she was staying, had quite a few drinks, and well, got pretty close. Her mom wasn't too happy about it, and I have a feeling she knew what was going on, even though I was 26 and she was 29, so it probably shouldn't have been a big deal. Haha. That night I also managed to break my foot. She tripped going down the stairs right in front of me, and instead of catching her, I stepped around her and put all my weight on one foot, which ended up breaking it. I had to wear a medical boot for a week. It's unfortunate that she struggled with addiction and some difficult behaviors. She was, and still is, very attractive and adventurous. From what I've heard, she's now clean and drinks very little, so I really hope she's doing well. Story 31. A company I used to work for had an old, mostly unused building behind the main office. It had long, winding hallways with hundreds of empty rooms and spaces. It was kind of fun to explore. The Wi-Fi was still active, so on days when I didn't feel like dealing with people, I'd find a quiet corner in that building and set up for a while. There was someone else who worked there, who wasn't exactly unattractive, but not particularly attractive either. Personality-wise, she could be a bit difficult, and her personal life was pretty complicated. Some of us would quietly joke about anyone desperate enough to get involved with her. It turned out she had a thing for me, but for years I kept her at arm's length. She was nice enough, but I was never really interested, especially since her life was pretty chaotic. Then I moved to the office near that old, mostly empty building. When she came up there, we'd chat sometimes. One day she saw me heading to the old building for one of my daily walks and decided to follow me. She'd never really explored it before. I showed her around, pointing out the old engineering areas and other spots. Eventually, we came across a room with a couch and a chair. Maybe it was what she was wearing, or maybe I was just in a different mindset, but when she bent over, I caught myself staring, and that was the moment things changed. After that, whenever she came to the office, she'd wear a skirt or dress, and we'd find our way back to that room. One day, she showed up wearing an engagement ring. I congratulated her and thought our thing was over. But it wasn't. We kept seeing each other right up until the week she left for her wedding and honeymoon. After that, it never happened again. Story 32. When I was 18 years old, I was visiting my dad during summer break. He was living at his girlfriend's house at the time, but she was away for the night. Being a dumb, nosy 18-year-old, I was rummaging through everything in the bathroom at 2 a.m. and found a box of rubber. So I opened one up and put it on and started soloing off with it on. When I was done, and to this day I have no idea why I did this, I threw the used rubber into a plant that was in the corner. Fast forward 2 days, my dad called me into their room, and they both looked pretty annoyed. He calmly asked if I had put the rubber there, and I instantly knew why they were asking. His girlfriend had found a used rubber in the plant and assumed it was his. But of course, he denied it and turned to me since I was the only other person in the house that night. Talk about instant regret. I immediately understood the situation and quickly made up a story. I said I found the box of rubbers, got curious, opened one, but then got grossed out and just threw it away. I was pretty sure they believed me. I avoided the embarrassment. His girlfriend seemed relieved, and everything seemed to be fine. I thought I was pretty slick for coming up with that so fast and getting them to buy it. However, one thing I didn't realize until years later was that I completely forgot the rubber was filled with my own, well, you know. I never brought it up again with my dad or anyone else. But looking back as an adult, it's pretty clear what really happened. They must have known right away what I'd done, but chose to stay silent to save everyone from embarrassment. I'm pretty sure his girlfriend just wanted reassurance that my dad wasn't cheating on her. Sometimes I wonder what that conversation was like after I left the room, but it's one I'll never ask about. Story 33. One rainy evening, I picked up 2 Hispanic women from a parking lot who needed a ride back to their hotel. They spoke to each other in Spanish throughout the drive, which I found kind of intriguing. During the ride, one of them asked me if I had a girlfriend. When I told her no, she smiled and invited me to come up to their hotel room once we arrived. Her friend went to take a shower, leaving just the 2 of us alone. Almost immediately, she began getting close to me and kissing me passionately. Things quickly escalated. Before I knew it, we were on the bed and started pulling down her clothes, only to discover she had a dong. I wasn't shocked or put off. In fact, I was honestly excited to explore something new. That day I experienced my first time with a dong. Later they asked if they could go through my back door. And though it was painful at first, I gradually got used to it and found myself enjoying every moment. After they were done, we hurriedly got dressed, and she quietly guided me out of the room. I got the feeling her friend didn't know her little secret either. Story 34. Many years ago, I was dating a pretty adventurous girl. One night, we decided to go to a park, and she suddenly said she wanted me to be with her on the gazebo. Honestly, I was so busy admiring her, she was way out of my league that I barely noticed anything else. So of course, I was all in. We went at it for a while, enough that the wooden slats of the gazebo started to get uncomfortable and both of us were feeling sore. Eventually, we both finished, and that's when I heard some faint muffled laughter nearby. I looked around but didn't see anyone at first. Then, as I was putting my clothes back on, I caught a glimpse of someone peeking out from a tiny window in a building next to the park and realized it was the sheriff's office. Guess they got a little show and then decided to leave us alone, so I'll call that a win-win. Story 35. I'm a 22-year-old guy, and I once helped my best friend, who's 20 and has severe IBS, during a night when she was very drunk. Her IBS tends to flare up at the worst times, and that night was no exception. She was blackout drunk, slurring her words, when I heard her quietly say, "I'm gonna poop my pants. I'm gonna poop my pants." I quickly took her to the handicap bathroom so she could hold onto the railing, then helped her sit down on the toilet and just let it happen. I even wiped for her, which was honestly the most harrowing experience of my life. I was drunk too, but not to the same extent, and I'm still not sure if I did the right thing, but I'd rather have done that than let her have an accident at the party. I never brought it up again, and our friendship hasn't changed a bit. Honestly, she might have forgotten about it, or maybe she just chooses not to acknowledge it happened. Either way, it was a tough experience, but she's an amazing friend, and I'd never want anyone else to find out. If they did, I'm pretty sure it'd be a disaster for both of us. Story 36. I spent 2 months nannying abroad for a wealthy, snobby couple. The child was wonderful, But as soon as we arrived, the parents completely changed. While it was exciting to be in a new country, the mom made sure my experience was miserable. I never felt comfortable. There were strict, unreasonable rules, constant shaming, and passive-aggressive behavior for no clear reason. I had no days off and never got to explore or do any of the things they had promised beforehand. During the last week, she went through my room and admitted to invading my privacy, again for no reason. She even shamed me for having a water bottle in my room. After 2 months of non-stop nonsense, I was beyond fed up. That night, I went to the bathroom, scrubbed her toothbrush in the toilet, and spat on it. Watching her come home, wine drunk, and brush her teeth felt like the best victory ever. I'm usually quiet and passive, and never imagined I'd do something like that, but some people just deserve it. Forever a win in my book. Story 37. One time, back when I had dropped out of college and was aimlessly hanging around the house, I took some acid. I was deep in it, completely tripping, when my mom yelled up the stairs telling me I had to drive my brother to lacrosse practice. I panicked. I asked why Dad couldn't take him, because driving while hallucinating is obviously a horrible idea. But my dad was mowing the lawn and refused to switch jobs with me, even when I offered to take over the mowing instead. For reasons I still don't fully understand, I didn't just admit that I was in no state to drive. I grabbed the keys, told my brother to hop in, and we left. The second I hit the road, it was a nightmare. I couldn't see anything clearly, just vague blobs where cars should be, and bursts of red from brake lights. The lane markings were non-existent to me. I basically just locked onto the taillights in front of me and followed them, praying they were going the right way. Somehow I managed to get him to his school and make it back home without crashing or hurting anyone. To this day, I have no idea how. It was pure luck, and I don't say that lightly. I'm generally pretty open about my past. But this might be the one story I take to the grave. I endangered lives that day. My brother's, mine, and potentially innocent strangers. It was a reckless, stupid decision that should never have happened. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation, don't make the mistake I did. Just admit you're not okay to drive. Own it, take the hit, because you might not be as lucky as I was, and the consequences could be irreversible. Story 38. I worked at a chain grocery store for 7 years, gradually moving up from a bagger to the third-in-line store manager. I took pride in my work ethic, never called out, always flexible, came in early, stayed late, and covered shifts whenever needed. I consistently went above and beyond, rarely saying no to anything asked of me. The environment shifted drastically after the store director who promoted me was transferred to another location. The new director and assistant manager took an immediate disliking to me for reasons I still don't understand. Despite my efforts, nothing I did was ever good enough. I was regularly criticized, mocked, and belittled, often in front of coworkers. Every year, I would submit my time off requests as early as possible, typically on January 2nd, to ensure consideration for key dates like family birthdays or holidays. But during my final year, from January through June, every request I made was denied, even when I simply asked for one of my usual 2 days off to coincide with a planned event. Meanwhile, both managers took their own vacations, and I was often the one covering their shifts. When I noticed the same pattern happening week after week, I would approach them politely and ask if my day off could be adjusted. They'd laugh at me and say no. By June, I'd had enough. I requested the first week of July off, knowing it was a busy time, and told them if they couldn't accommodate it, I'd be forced to give my 2 weeks' notice. They laughed again, calling it a bluff, and told me they didn't owe me anything. The next day, I handed in my resignation. Once more, they laughed and dismissed it like a joke. I continued working just as hard until my final day. That day, the assistant manager approached me sarcastically and said, "See you tomorrow." I asked if they'd reconsidered my request. He laughed again and walked out. I was livid. I walked into the deli and took a squirt bottle. I filled it with raw chicken juice, the kind that collects in the packaging of whole chickens, blood, fat, chunks, and all. I sprayed every surface in their shared office: the phone, keyboard, mouse, chair, door handle, air vent, cabinets, and desk. I even dumped the rest behind the drawers. I wasn't aiming to make anyone sick, but I sincerely hope it stank to high heaven for a long time. Story 39. For me, it really comes down to how much I love casual banging and one-night stands. I have friends who believe in no physical relations before marriage, and they see sleeping with strangers as disrespecting your body. Honestly, if they knew how much I enjoy casual meetups, they'd probably cut me off. But I've never understood why seeking intimacy purely for personal pleasure should be seen as disrespectful to your body. To me, it's the opposite. I feel celebrated and worshipped when a man takes his time, kissing every part of me. That's what makes sense. I don't buy into the idea that wanting intimacy for yourself is somehow degrading. I choose my partners based on how much they give in bed. Men who genuinely enjoy spending hours pleasuring a woman, that's what matters most to me. My intimate encounters are about having fun and leaving feeling happy and giddy. Funny enough, I've had less satisfying intimacy in committed relationships. Sometimes a guy who's not looking for commitment but puts his all into one amazing encounter can be a better experience than a boyfriend who's committed to you but not fully invested in the bedroom. Story 40. I work as a delivery driver for a couple of local Domino's pizza franchises. Thanks to the owner's very big idea, none of us are contract workers, which means I get paid full minimum wage and keep all my delivery tips. But I also do way more than just deliveries. Since I'm almost 40 now, I started in my early 30s. About 8 years ago, I've become the full-time closing driver for the stores I'm scheduled at, and my main in-store job is doing the dishes. On busy nights or when we're short-staffed, I end up with the entire day's worth of dishes at closing. Piles of dirty pans, reusable containers and lids, and all sorts of kitchen tools. They expect all of it done within about 2 hours of closing, which means I'm basically running a dishwashing marathon, soap, rinse, sanitize, until my back screams at me to stop for a breather. One weird challenge: bathroom breaks, especially when I need to pee. I've caught myself peeing in rinsed out food tubs, because I'm not about to let my junk touch leftover pizza toppings or cheese in dirty sink water or even in empty sinks while I'm refilling them, just to avoid losing time walking to the store bathroom. In my head, I justify it by thinking there's already all kinds of biological matter going down those drains, and the urine smell would be totally masked by the garbage and food odors. I always make sure to rinse those tubs thoroughly and power wash the sinks with the sprayer to clean up any trace. Still, if anyone knew what I did when I was alone washing dishes, I'm pretty sure they'd never look at me the same way again. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.